The Zorathian High Council convened in the Grand Spire, a structure of gleaming crystal and shimmering energy fields that hovered over their capital city. Ordinarily, such meetings were rare, occasions of solemn celebration or artistic revelation. But today, the air was heavy with fear. Supreme Chancellor Velrian, a figure whose mere presence usually brought calm to the room, looked harrowed. His deep blue skin had paled to an ashen hue, and his elegant robes seemed to sag under the weight of the moment. He faced the holographic projection flickering before the council, a galactic plea for help. The message was simple. The Zorathian people, renowned for their peace and beauty, were on the brink of annihilation. "The Vorvith are relentless," Velrian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've already taken 3 colonies. Their war engines churn endlessly. If we do not find aid, Zorath itself will fall." The council murmured, but no solution came. The Vorvith were infamous across the galaxy, technologically advanced, brutal in their conquests, and merciless toward their victims. The Galactic Federation, a collective of the universe's most advanced civilizations, had sent scouts to assess the situation. Their verdict had been grim: intervention was futile. As despair settled over the chamber, a soft chime indicated an incoming response to their broadcast. Velrian straightened, his hope rekindled. The projection expanded to reveal a representative of the Galactic Federation. It was not an alien species known for its military prowess, nor a council of strategists offering solutions. Instead, the emblem of humanity, a simple insignia of Earth encircled by stars, materialized. The Zorathians exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity? Their civilization was young by galactic standards, barely out of its experimental phase in spacefaring technology. Known for their chaotic tendencies and unrefined methods, humans were seen as more a curiosity than a dependable ally. "Esteemed Zorathians," came a calm, measured voice. The human speaker, Admiral Elias Corrin, appeared on the holographic display. His uniform was stark and practical, a sharp contrast to the flowing attire of the Zorathian Council. His dark eyes scanned the room with an intensity that demanded attention. "We received your call for assistance. Humanity will answer." Velrian rose from his seat, his crystalline staff catching the ambient light. "Admiral Corrin," he began cautiously, "your offer is unexpected. The Vorvith are a foe unlike any you faced. Are you certain your people understand the gravity of this situation?" Corrin's lips curved into a faint smile. "We understand better than most. Humanity has faced extinction more times than we can count. Plagues, wars, ecological collapse. Survival is in our blood. And we've learned that sometimes it's not the strongest who win, but the most determined." The council erupted in whispers. Was this boldness or recklessness? Velrian raised a hand to silence them. "Admiral, with respect, the Federation itself has declared this fight unwinnable. What forces could you possibly send against the Vorvith that might succeed where others have failed?" Corrin's expression didn't waver. "We'll send what we have. It may not impress you, but I assure you, it will be enough." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Zorathian Council in stunned silence. Velrian's advisors erupted in protests. How could they entrust their fate to these humans? Their technology was rudimentary, their fleets outdated. And yet, there was something unsettlingly convincing about Corrin's calm assurance. Days later, when humanity's promised fleet arrived, skepticism turned to outright horror. The Zorathians had expected gleaming starships equipped with the latest weaponry, perhaps even experimental technology. Instead, a ragtag armada of battered vessels limped into orbit. Their hulls were patched with mismatched alloys, their engines emitted trails of sputtering plasma, and their designs were an amalgamation of eras and ideas, some centuries out of date. Zorathian analysts scrambled to assess the incoming fleet. The ships were a far cry from the sleek, precision-engineered vessels of the Federation. Instead, they bore names etched into their hulls with stubborn pride. Perseverance, ironclad, bitter end to the Zorathians, they were nothing short of relics. Velrian watched the fleet with a sinking heart. When Admiral Corrin appeared again via hologram, the Supreme Chancellor struggled to mask his despair. "Admiral, I must admit, I fail to understand your strategy. These ships, they are not what we expected. Corin's smile was wry. That's the point, Chancellor. The Vorvith won't expect them either. The Council was incredulous. You intend to defeat a war machine like the Vorvith with these scrap heaps? One advisor demanded. They're not just scrap, Corin countered. They're history. Every ship in this fleet has survived more battles than most civilizations can count. They've been rebuilt, reimagined, and rearmed. But most importantly, they're crewed by people who know what it means to fight when the odds are impossible. The human fleet began its descent toward the staging ground, a Zorathian colony that had become the Vorvith's next target. The Zorathian civilians on the surface watched in dismay as the human ships landed. Their sleek, crystalline structures were dwarfed by the hulking, rusted vessels. Zorathian soldiers looked on with a mix of curiosity and derision as human engineers and soldiers emerged, wearing patched uniforms and hauling equipment that seemed primitive by galactic standards. Among them was Captain Mira Halstead, a hardened veteran with a no-nonsense demeanor. She approached Velrian, her stride purposeful. Chancellor, I'm here to coordinate defenses. Your people know the terrain. My people know how to fight. Together, we'll hold this colony. Velrian hesitated, but something in Halstead's steel-gray eyes silenced his doubts. Very well, Captain, he said. But I must warn you, our people are not soldiers. We are artists, scholars. We lack your resolve. Halstead nodded. That's why we're here. You hold the line, Chancellor, and we'll show you what resolve looks like. As the human engineers worked alongside the Zorathians to fortify the colony, whispers of doubt still lingered. But for the first time in weeks, there was also something else in the air, a flicker of hope. The Vorvith were coming, and against all odds, humanity had chosen to stand with the Zorathians. When the first Vorvith ships appeared on the colony's horizon, their metallic hulls gleaming like predators, the Zorathians braced for annihilation. But among the humans, there was no fear, only determination. From the Rust Fleet's battered hulls, the faint glow of readiness emanated, a quiet defiance that promised the Vorvith more than they had bargained for. The battle was about to begin, and humanity's weakest fleet was ready to prove it might just be the strongest after all. The first explosion rocked the planet's surface, sending a shockwave that rattled the Zorathian defenses. Velrian, standing atop the colony's command center, gripped the railing, his heart pounding. Through the transparent walls, the first signs of the Vorvith invasion were clear. Massive warships, sleek and predatory, loomed ominously over the horizon. Their gravity wells distorted the atmosphere, making the sky shimmer with unnatural ripples. "Vorvith are here," murmured Captain Mira Halstead, her voice as calm as the cool air in the room. Beside her, the young Lieutenant Cade, one of the human officers, fiddled nervously with his console, watching a stream of incoming data. "We're outnumbered," Cade said, his brow furrowing as the readouts filled the screen. "I'm counting at least 30 capital ships, maybe more." Halstead didn't flinch. She had seen worse odds, much worse, during the countless battles that had scarred her career. But this was different. This time, it wasn't just the enemy they were up against, it was the weight of expectations. The Zorathians, with their elegant culture and long history, had never known war in this way. They had never known the struggle of survival on a galactic scale. Halstead could feel the tension radiating from their faces, the silent question in their eyes. Can humans really do this? She glanced at Velrian. The Supreme Chancellor's regal posture was gone, replaced by a figure teetering on the edge of resolve and doubt. "You said your fleet was ready," Velrian said, his voice betraying the strain in his tone. "But this is not what I expected." "The fleet's ready," Halstead replied, her gaze hardening. "It's not about size or firepower. It's about outsmarting them. You Zorathians have the advantage on the ground. We have the advantage in the sky." Her words hung in the air, the weight of them lingering like a challenge. The Zorathian's hesitation was palpable, but Velrian nodded slowly, his resolve hardening. "Then let's fight." The human fleet, despite its battered appearance, moved swiftly. From the command center, Halstead could see the Rust Fleet begin its ascent, their rusted hulls reflecting the light of the approaching Vorvith ships like a cluster of tarnished stars. The human fleet was a chaotic mosaic of old ships, each with its own history and purpose. Perseverance a cruiser once designed for exploration, Ironclad, a warship long past its prime, bitter end, a derelict carrier scavenged from the remnants of previous conflicts. They were not beautiful ships, not by any stretch of the imagination. But as they formed up in the sky, Halstead saw something more powerful than mere aesthetics, a stubborn resilience. She trusted in that resilience. She trusted in her crew. The first strike came with the sheer force of an avalanche. The Vorvith capital ships unleashed a barrage of laser fire, each bolt carrying the weight of their bloodthirsty reputation. A direct hit to Perseverance caused a massive explosion, but the ship didn't break apart as expected. Instead, it surged forward, its damaged engines flaring with renewed energy. Halstead had known that would happen. The ship's crew were seasoned, experienced. They'd been through hell together before, and this was no different. "Engage evasive maneuvers," Halstead barked, her voice steady as she surveyed the unfolding chaos. "Don't give them a clear shot." The ships of the Rust fleet scattered like a swarm, their erratic movements disorienting the Vorvith gunners. The alien fleet was used to their enemies falling in a predictable pattern. Humanity, however, was unpredictable, often sacrificing precision for sheer disruption. Perseverance fired off its surviving weapons, not aimed for perfect strikes, but designed to create chaos, exploding debris, jamming frequencies, distorting Vorvith targeting systems. The Vorvith, overconfident in their technological superiority, began to falter. Their fleet split in two, each ship trying to track and target the ever-moving humans. It was a mess, a chaotic, beautifully crafted mess. Halstead watched from the command deck, her eyes scanning for weaknesses. The Vorvith were aggressive, no doubt, but they lacked the versatility of the human fleet. They relied on overwhelming power, not cunning. The trick was to make them think they were winning while slowly drawing them into a trap. "Set course for the asteroid field," she ordered, her mind already calculating their next move. Cade hesitated, his fingers flying over the controls. "Are you sure? That field's unstable. We'll be vulnerable." "We'll be more vulnerable out here," Halstead replied, her eyes narrowing. "Trust me, Lieutenant. I've got this." The fleet moved toward the asteroid field, weaving through the floating debris at breakneck speeds. The Vorvith followed, their ships closing in for the kill. But Halstead wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of an easy fight. The moment the Vorvith entered the asteroid field, Halstead executed the plan. The human ships, now in their element, weaved in and out of the floating rocks, their irregular patterns making them nearly impossible to hit. The Vorvith, however, were not as nimble. Their heavy ships struggled to maneuver through the dense field, and in the chaos, they collided with the asteroids, their once pristine hulls now scarred with scratches and dents. For a moment, the battlefield seemed to freeze. The Vorvith, frustrated and disoriented, were vulnerable. Halstead's voice cut through the tension. "Now, all ships, fire at will." The Rust fleet unleashed everything they had. Missiles, energy blasts, and makeshift traps rained down on the Vorvith fleet. The Vorvith ships, still recovering from their forced entrance into the asteroid field, were slow to react. In the ensuing chaos, a few ships broke apart entirely, and others limped away, retreating into the void. But the battle was far from over. The Vorvith still outnumbered them, and Halstead knew it was only a matter of time before their relentless pursuit returned. The human fleet had won a skirmish, but the true test was still ahead. She looked at Velrian, whose wide eyes now gleamed with something akin to hope. "You see," Halstead said, her voice low. "It's not about numbers. It's about strategy." Velrian nodded slowly, a sense of awe and respect growing in him. He had expected failure, but what he saw now was a glimmer of the impossible. The humans were not just survivors, they were a force to be reckoned with. And for the first time, Velrian believed it was possible. But the Vorvith would not give up so easily. The next wave was already assembling, and this time, they would not underestimate the Rust fleet. The second wave came just before dawn, a brutal torrent of firepower and sheer will. The Vorvith had regrouped, their ships now fully aware of the threat humanity posed. They were no longer underestimating the Rust fleet. This time, they came prepared, their ships equipped with enhanced targeting systems and reinforced shields. Halstead watched them approach from the command deck of Ironclad, the ship that had once been a proud symbol of human strength, now reduced to a battered relic. But it was still alive, still kicking, and it would fight to the last breath. She stood at the viewport, her arms crossed, watching the approaching enemy like a lion sizing up a rival predator. "We need to buy time," Halstead muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Behind her, Lieutenant Cade ran his fingers over the console, eyes flickering rapidly as he calculated their odds. "If we engage directly, we'll be outgunned. There's no way we can win in a head-to-head fight." "We won't fight them head-to-head," Halstead replied, turning back to him. "We're going to outsmart them. We need to pull them into the trap, keep them on the move, make them second-guess every decision they make." Cade nodded, though he looked uneasy. "The asteroid field's too dangerous to go back to. They'll adapt." "Then we go to Plan B," Halstead said with a hard smile. "Let's give them something to chase." The command room fell silent as the crew began to scramble. The plan was risky, maybe even reckless, but it was the only chance they had. The Rust fleet had learned to thrive on unpredictability, and it was time to put that edge to full use. Halstead made the call. The human ships scattered, each one headed toward a different quadrant of the battlefield. Perseverance veered sharply, moving toward a nearby nebula, while Bitter End angled toward a distant black hole. The Vorvith, sensing the divide, hesitated for only a moment before they pursued, confident in their ability to catch their prey. But that's exactly what Halstead wanted. She'd given them a false sense of superiority. Velrian, standing next to Halstead, watched in disbelief. "Are they mad?" he asked. "What are they trying to do?" "They're trying to confuse the Vorvith," Halstead said, her voice steady. "Get them to focus on the wrong things. Give them the illusion of victory." The first mistake came when the Vorvith took the bait. They charged toward Perseverance, sensing an easy kill. But just as they got within range, the ship suddenly blinked out of existence, reappearing hundreds of kilometers away in the shadow of a nearby moon. The Vorvith ships were caught off guard, their sensors scrambled, and for a few critical moments, they didn't know which way to turn. Halstead's voice rang out through the command center. "Now, all ships, converge. We've got them on the run." The human fleet regrouped, closing the distance with ferocity. Each ship, no matter how old or battered, seemed to awaken with a renewed sense of purpose. The Rust fleet wasn't just surviving, it was fighting like it had something to prove. The next phase of the plan came when Bitter End, the last ship the Vorvith had ignored, turned toward their flagship, Argoth. The old carrier wasn't fast, but it was crafty. Halstead had outfitted it with a series of decoys and false signal generators, making it appear as though it was carrying a full complement of weapons. The Vorvith, hungry for a fight, took the bait again. They began closing in, their weapons charged. But just as they did, the decoys deployed, creating an illusion of several enemy fleets. The Vorvith hesitated for just a moment, long enough for the Rust fleet to strike. Missiles streaked through the black void, and the soundless explosions lit up the darkened space. A few Vorvith ships shattered under the surprise barrage, others staggered, disoriented by the trickery. In the chaos, the Vorvith flagship Argoth found itself caught in a crossfire it couldn't escape. "Hit them now," Halstead commanded, her voice unyielding. "Push them to the edge." The Rust fleet did just that. The sudden, chaotic wave of firepower, combined with the clever tricks they'd played, left the Vorvith scrambling. They'd expected a quick victory, but instead, they were trapped in a deadly dance with opponents who refused to fold. The Rust fleet wasn't just fighting, it was winning, against all odds. But Halstead knew the battle wasn't over. The Vorvith were relentless, and they had one last weapon at their disposal, a massive disruptor cannon mounted on Argoth. It was capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single shot, a last-ditch attempt to end the battle in their favor. Halstead's eyes narrowed as the massive ship turned, its disruptor aiming squarely at the heart of the human forces. She felt a pang of dread. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. If the Vorvith fired, it would be over. "Do we have a plan for this?" Cade asked, his voice tinged with panic. Halstead's mind raced. There was no time for fancy tricks now. No time for games. They had one chance to stop the disruptor before it fired. "We need to get Perseverance into position," Halstead said, her voice cold with resolve. "Now." The ship, Perseverance, had been in the thick of the fight, weaving through the wreckage of the previous assault. It was damaged, its weapons nearly drained, but it was still fast. Captain Mira Halstead knew it had one last push in it. She gave the order herself. The ship surged forward, engines roaring with a final burst of energy. Perseverance hurtled toward Argoth, dodging incoming fire from the Vorvatha's remaining ships. It was a suicide run, one Halstead knew would cost them everything. But it was the only way. As Perseverance collided with the Argotha's disruptor cannon, the impact sent a shockwave through the battlefield. The cannon fired, but the shot was deflected, its energy split by the collision. Perseverance was gone, its sacrifice monumental. But the Vorvath flagship was left crippled, its weapon destroyed, and its fleet faltering. The remaining Vorvath ships scattered, their once unbreakable confidence shattered. The Rust fleet had done the impossible. Velrian, who had watched it all from the command center, turned to Halstead, his face a mix of awe and disbelief. You did it. Against all odds, you actually did it. Halstead, eyes fixed on the empty space where Perseverance had once been, nodded slowly. No. We did it. All of us. The battle was won, but the cost had been high. The Rust fleet had proven its worth, but the scars of war would remain. As the last of the Vorvath retreated into the void, Halstead's mind shifted to the future. Zorath had been saved. Humanity had earned its place in the stars. But the galaxy, for all its beauty and peace, had learned an undeniable truth: never underestimate humanity's resolve.